Hey everybody, Susan Modest here. I hope you're having a fantastic day, whatever day that you end up watching this, or evening or night, whenever. I hope it's going really well for you. And today I want to ask you a question. So you probably know and have heard that the US dollar has been losing value or spending power since 1971 when the government decided to no longer use gold as the backup. So that's when we lost the gold standard on currency. And so many other currencies in the world kind of base their value against the US dollar. So with the US dollar losing spending power and losing value since 1971 steadily, how is it? How are you specifically, you, not people in society, but you, how are you protecting yourself and protecting your money? Are you doing anything at all? Do you think there's anything you can do? Do you feel like you're just kind of a victim to this and the fact that it's almost inevitable that our money is not going to go as far? For example, $50,000, that was pretty good, I think, maybe 30 years ago or 40 years ago for a family to be able to live comfortably. And that's, of course, when houses cost a lot less, cars cost a lot less, food cost a lot less. So then you have that natural inflation, or is it natural? That's another question, right? It's another question we could ponder sometime. Is it natural? Probably not, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that is a expected thing, that there's going to be that kind of cost of living rise. Well, while that's all rising, our actual spending power on our dollar is actually going down, and we're feeling it, right? I mean, a family of four can't live comfortably on $50,000 anymore. They can live very frugally, probably, and cutting a lot of corners, a lot of things that they are not going to be able to do. They probably can have a roof over their head, which is in the United States anyway, which is a great thing, because there's a large part of the world that doesn't even have that, right? So very, very privileged if you have that. But it's the whole idea that you can have a certain amount of money and think that you've worked hard to maybe get there. You might even have degrees, or you just work a lot of hours. You just work really hard. But to know that money has less spending power, that's hard. That's kind of a hard reality. And then if you think a little bit into the future, if you even saved 50,000 or 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, if you've been a saver and you have that for retirement or for your future, and you're thinking, 30 years down the line, 25 years, whenever you retire, you're thinking that maybe you'll be taken care of. But then when you think that you could have 30 years into retirement, or 25, and some of you, if you're watching and you're really young, you could have 40 years before you actually retire, and you have this amount of money that you think you've done well to save. But then once you get there, if things are on the same trajectory, which they will be, unless something changes, right? Or unless you change something on that trajectory, you're not going to be able to have that money go as far as it would go today, or that it definitely as far as it went years ago. So, what can we do? What can you do? So all of this came from me watching Robert Kyosaki this morning, and he was just, he's one of those people that teach on how to build wealth. He doesn't teach about how to just increase your income and things like that. He talks about it, but he teaches more on wealth, because wealth is a different thing. Wealth is going to give you some freedoms. It's going to give you not only security where your bills and things are paid. Excuse me, I have a cold again. But also how to get to a point where you're not having to exchange your time for that money, so that you even have time freedom and choice freedoms, and then freedom to be able to leave things behind for generations. Okay, so because people shouldn't have to start from the beginning every single generation. That's not what rich people do. That's not wealthy people don't do that. They don't make each generation start over, right? Um, that's a whole other subject. But so anyway, Robert Kiyosaki is always talking about wealth. And so one of the things he was talking about was the fact that rich people already do this, but individuals like you and I have to shift our thinking from thinking about just saving. How are we saving our money? How are we working for our money? To how are we hedging our money? And hedging, if you're not familiar with that, I'm sure you've heard it used, but because it's a financial term that's used, and sometimes we think that that's just for investors or the very wealthy to even worry about. But hedging just means minimizing your risk of loss, okay? And each one of us is at a risk for loss just by the fact that the dollar is going down. So how do we hedge it? There's a couple of ways, and Robert Kiyosaki, he talked about 3 ways that he does it. He does it through gold, silver, and oil. And before you start thinking that, okay, that's because he's rich, stay with me. Because at least 2 of those 3 ways you can start doing today. All right. The other thing that we have that he doesn't mention, is cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, things like that. If you've been watching the Bitcoin values and you've been thinking that it's no longer worth getting into because, in December it had reached as high as 20,000 per Bitcoin, and then it dipped all the way back down to 6,000-ish, and now it's around 85, 84. If you're looking at only the volatility of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency because you're thinking about day-to-day earning, then that's not something that you may be ready for, okay? But if you can get yourself if you can get yourself a little bit more education on it, then you can understand that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are for the long term. Any kind of spikes in value, those are nice perks when they happen, okay? But that's not what they were ever for. That's not what Bitcoin was designed for. It's just a perk. And if you understand it enough, you can see that that is basically the future of money. And the values are such that it becomes a hedge against the devaluing of the US dollar. I've done other videos on this. Feel free to look at why Bitcoin specifically has value. But that whole idea of money or cash as we know it devaluing because they're just putting zeros, which make them basically meaningless. The creator of Bitcoin protected or hedged against that by only having a limited number of Bitcoin that will ever be in circulation, but also having basically a ledger that prevents any kind of duplication and that type of thing. Because that even happened with gold at one point in time where more than one person was lent the value of that gold. And it's like, who owns it in the end? Okay, but that's a whole other thing. Now, that's why Bitcoin specifically, even though there are other cryptocurrencies I like, but that's why that one really was built to be a hedge against the devaluing dollar. Okay, so yes, price increases, high valuation of Bitcoin, all excellent things, but that is not the only perk of Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies. So I like that one in the portfolio for the regular person to be able to start hedging our money and keeping the store of value. Now, gold and silver, precious metals, I also agree with that. And I also participate in that, okay? Of the ones that Kiyosaki mentioned, oil is the one that I haven't gotten into yet. But, do what you can where you are. And Bitcoin, gold, and silver are accessible to the everyday person. And you can think of it as some people say, okay, well, maybe you're saving differently. I will go one step further and I would say you are hedging your money by at least those three things when you participate in them. So, definitely check out Robert Kiyosaki's video on that. He is an authority on wealth building. And then connect with me if you're interested in seeing how I'm hedging my money in both cryptocurrency and precious metals, and how you can start doing it from as little as about $30 a month. Okay, so there's plans for everybody. Obviously, there's more aggressive plans, and then there's just getting in and starting to protect something. Okay, so thank you for your time. Hope this makes sense to you. Leave any questions you have for me below this video, and reach out to me on Facebook is probably the easiest way to connect, and let me know how I can help or I can explain further. Let me know if this was of any value to you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.